Good morning, everyone. I hope you are doing well. Am I audible, guys? Good morning. Chaliye. Now, in our previous lecture, we were talking about Sher Shah Suri. We had looked at his background and rise to power. Next, we were talking about the reforms initiated by him. We had discussed his administrative reforms in central, provincial, and sub-provincial administration, and in local administration. Next, we have to talk about the economic reforms introduced by him in the field of highway and sarai construction, in the monetary system, and for the promotion of trade and crafts in the field of the customs regime, along with the revenue reforms introduced by him. And following this, we'll be looking at the military reforms introduced by Sher Shah Suri. ये हो चुका है. This and this we need to cover, right? The first, economic reforms. And within this, first of all, we'll be addressing the revenue reforms of Sher Shah Suri. Right. Now, objectives of Sher Shah Suri's revenue reforms were twofold. First of all, to augment state income, and secondly, to encourage agricultural production. Okay. Now, in order to augment state income, what needed to be done? First of all, regularity in remission of taxes to the center, that had to be ensured. And secondly, to prevent the diversion of revenue at the lower levels of administration. ठीक है? As far as encouraging production was concerned, Sher Shah firmly believed that the rayati or the peasantry is the axis of production. And if the rayati is satisfied, then the country will be prosperous and populous. Okay? Therefore, he wanted to provide protection to peasants. Not only from excessive collection or excessive taxation, but also from illegal extortion by the local intermediaries. ठीक है? What was the grander objective behind these two aims? Grander objective क्या था? To strengthen the military by augmenting state income, centralize authority by reducing the powers and privileges of the local intermediaries, and political stability by encouraging production at the lowest levels, at the cultivator level, and thus inducing prosperity across the country. Political stability would be a function of economic stability. Okay? So these were the objectives. In order to fulfill these, Sher Shah Suri introduced a new system of land revenue administration known as the Zabti system. What was it? It was based on the system of survey and measurement of land. Revenue assessment was to be done at the time of sowing the crops. By local officials under the supervision of royal officials. At this time of survey, land would be categorized into 3 categories on the basis of soil fertility. Into good, average and bad quality of land. ठीक है? By measuring the net sown area, तो जितना भी कल्टीवेटर एरिया सो कर रहा है उसके ऊपर टैक्स लगेगा. एंड ऐसा नहीं है कि एक यूनिफॉर्म लेवल पे टैक्स लगेगा. The average yield was estimated by preparing the average of different yields for the soil categories. Right? So suppose this is one plot of land that is being cultivated by a farmer. Okay? Now let us say that this is average quality of land. Under the previous system, the element of sample cutting was used. This I am talking about during the period of Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So first of all, revenue assessment was not done at the time of sowing the land, rather at the time of harvesting the land, क्योंकि तभी sample cutting possible है, right? तो sample cutting करते थे, एक एरिया से थोड़ी सी फसलों को काट लेंगे, उसको वे करेंगे, they are going to be weighed, and using the unitary system, the average yield from a plot of land is going to be calculated. ठीक है, तो उसको multiply कर देंगे with the net sown area divided by the area that from where sample cutting has been done. Earlier this used to be done. Problem क्या होता था? Maybe this part of the land is good quality land, right? This part of the land is bad quality land. This part of the land is average quality land, right? And generally, in order to maximize production, the revenue assessors, surveyors जो हैं, where are they going to do the sample cutting from? From the good quality land, from the best quality land only. What was the result of this? It resulted in overburdening of the peasants. So they would have to pay excessive taxes. Actual yield is not that much. Okay? Therefore, in order to avoid over taxation, this solution was thought of, that we should divide the land into 3 categories: good, average and bad. And before our assessors go to the particular field, we should already have an average of the amount of yield from this region, जहां पे भी जिस जिले में, जिस सरकार में या फिर जिस गांव में कल्टीवेशन हो रहा है, वहां का एवरेज यील्ड उनके पास होना चाहिए. So this yield is going to be applied uniformly, and this is going to help not only prevent over exploitation of the peasants, but it is also going to help in reducing the balance between the difference between the estimated collection and the actual collection. ठीक है? So The Zapti system produced two kinds of figures, one known as Jama and the other known as Hasil. Jama was the estimated revenue and Hasil was the actual revenue that was collected from the peasants after the crops had already been harvested. ठीक है? Now, what is going to happen if this Jama figure has either been overestimated or underestimated? Hasil figure is not going to match with this, and the state is going to have problems with planning expenditure in the future. Okay? Because it is relying upon land revenue as its chief source of income. Therefore, it is important to minimize the difference between Jama and Hasil. Is this much clear? Sure. Now, in order to protect the rights of the peasants and ensure that the local khuds and mukaddams, those who have the responsibility of collecting the revenue at the time of harvest, they are not overcharging them. Okay? So, two legal documents were meant to ensure the protection of the peasants. क्या थे ये? The patta and kabuliyat. These were issued to the cultivator at the time of revenue estimation. जब सोइंग का काम चल रहा है, बुआई का काम चल रहा है, ठीक है? क्या होता था पट्टा? This was the title deed, and kabuliyat was the memorandum of acceptance. What is the significance of the patta? It confirmed the right of that particular peasant to which this document has been given to cultivate a piece of land. But this was issued to the peasant only when he agrees to certain terms and conditions. What are those terms and conditions going to be? That at the end of the harvest cycle, he agrees, kabul karta hai, that I am going to pay the state this much in revenue. Is this clear? So that was known as the kabuliyat. The kabuliyat was signed between the state and the peasant after a negotiated settlement between the state representative and the individual peasant later on. Okay? Now, on the basis of the kabuliyat, the state issued the patta. Is this clear? Now, in both these documents, what was mentioned? The exact amount of revenue that has to be paid by each cultivator to the state. The peasant was also aware of this. The state was also aware of this. So what is going to happen if the local zamindar or the local mukaddam tries to collect extra money from the peasant? The peasant may appeal against that mukaddam to the state officials, to the revenue officials, and then charges may be brought against him for extortion, embezzlement, etc. So this was meant to protect the interests of which class? The peasantry. The rate of revenue was fixed at 1/3 of the estimated production. ठीक है। तो at the time of sowing, the state officials are estimating ना that at the end of the cycle how much exactly is going to be produced. तो जितना भी फिगर होता था उसका 1/3 कैलकुलेट किया जाता था and that was assigned as जमा. Clear? Now, mode of collection. What was it to be? Now, if the state wants to encourage interconnectedness of the entire empire's economy and the growth of trade, commerce, crafts production, so best candidate is going to be collection in kind or collection in cash. In cash. Cash economy से क्या होगा? Cash में collection से क्या होगा? The peasants are going to be forced to leave the barter system and adopt the monetary system. The rural economy may thus be linked through this cash nexus to the urban economy. The resources being generated at the rural level may be mobilized at the city level in order to encourage production activities as well as trade and commerce. ठीक है? So mode of collection क्या होगा? Cash. Right? Now there emerges a problem with this. What is that? How to determine, क्योंकि लैंड से कैश तो निकल नहीं रहा है, लैंड से तो ग्रेन्स निकल रहे हैं. हाउ टू डिटरमिन द रेट एट विच द क्रॉप यील्ड शुड बी कन्वर्टेड इनटू अ कैश अमाउंट. ठीक है. फॉर दैट शेर शाह prepared a price list or a rate list to convert the crop amount or the kind amount into cash amount. That was known as the ray. तो शेर शाह's ray or शेर शाह's ray. It is going to contain the rates for all kinds of commodities that are being cultivated by the cultivators in the entire empire. Now, it would have made greater sense to prepare separate lists for different regions, क्योंकि हर जगह पे prevailing prices अलग अलग crops के अलग होंगे. कहीं पे ज्यादा production हो रहा है तो prices कम होंगे, कहीं पे कम production हो रहा है तो prices ज्यादा होंगे. But Sher Shah Suri did not have the time to perfect his system. Therefore, he prepared a single price list for the entire empire and applied it uniformly. The prevailing prices were based on the prices of commodities, various agricultural products in Delhi. ठीक है. तो इससे फायदा किसका होगा, नुकसान किसका होगा? फायदा स्टेट का होगा या पेजेंट का होगा इसकी वजह से? अब दिल्ली में सोचो, जनरली prices of agricultural commodities, are they going to be greater than or lower than in the rural areas? हायर होंगे. ठीक है. तो दिल्ली के प्राइसेस के बेसिस पर अगर पेजेंट का जो रेवेन्यू लायबिलिटी है उसको काइंड फॉर्म से कैश फॉर्म में कन्वर्ट किया जा रहा है, सो विल द फार्मर बी पेइंग अ लोअर शेयर ऑफ व्हाट ही शुड बी और हायर शेयर देन व्हाट ही शुड बी? Higher share, right? So the disadvantage of this system was that it overburdened the peasants because prices in urban centers are always liable to be overinflated. Thus, conversion का जो process था, this made the system a little exploitative also. ठीक है. Now, apart from land revenue, that is kharaj, some other levies were also extracted from the peasants. These include the जरीबाना. जरी का मतलब क्या होता है? It means chain. So what does a chain have to do with the process of revenue estimation? क्योंकि एक चेन, आयरन का चेन या फिर स्टील का चेन ऑफ अ पर्टिकुलर लेंथ वाज यूज्ड इन ऑर्डर टू मेजर द लैंड. ठीक है. सो the people who have been given the responsibility of measuring the land, they also have to be paid. And who is going to pay for them for that? The state is going to pay for that, but out of the revenues, the surplus being generated by the cultivators, the producers. ठीक है. So zaribana was a tax that was collected to pay the revenue assessors. So this was a tax for survey and measurement of land. It was collected at the rate of 2.5% of the total produce. ठीक है. Another tax used to be there known as the मुहासिलाना. राइट. यहाँ पे क्या टर्म आ रहा है? हासिल. हासिल का मतलब किसी चीज को अचीव करना, अटेन करना, द एक्चुअल कलेक्शन. सो दिस वाज अ टैक्स ऑन द कलेक्शन ऑफ टैक्स. ठीक है. So those people who are actually collecting the revenue from the farmers, they will have to also be compensated. So it was for paying them. This was collected at the rate of 5% of the total revenue. Okay. Then apart from that, since Sher Shah Suri was deeply concerned about the problem of recurring famines, which had become a common feature of North Indian economic landscape, especially during the last stages of the Lodi Sultanate and the initial years of Humayun's Sultanate, right? Humayun's empire. Because of political instability, constant warfare, famines were breaking out quite regularly. So Sher Shah Suri was concerned about them because they had the potentiality to disrupt the political system as a whole. They are going to first of all flatten the agricultural output, thus affect the state's income. They may also lead to political unrest rising from the ground level, right? So rebellions might brew as a result of it. In order to address this problem, he introduced an emergency tax known as ढाई सेरी. राइट. सॉरी, क्या था ये? इट वॉज एन emergency tax. Collected in which form? Kind or cash? In kind form, right? Would it also be remitted along with the cash that has been collected to the center, or would it be kept locally? Kept locally, क्योंकि उसका यूज लोकल फैमिन्स पे रिलीफ देने के लिए यूज किया जाएगा. तो इट वाज stored locally, and rate of this tax was 2.5 सेर per बीघा of land that is being cultivated. Seer used to be a unit of weight measurement. One seer is roughly equivalent to 40 kilos. ठीक है. तो ढाई सेर हो गया करीब 100 किलो. तो 100 kgs per बीघा of land that is being cultivated by each farmer, that is going to be taken by the local authorities as an emergency tax to provide relief during times of famine or other natural calamities. ठीक है. हाँ जरीबाना, हाँ टोटल प्रोड्यूस है, टोटल प्रोड्यूस। This also total 2.5% of the total produce, not of the tax collect. किसमें, इसमें नहीं, टोटल प्रोड्यूस है ये भी, ऑफ द टोटल प्रोड्यूस। ठीक है। नाउ शेर शाह सूरी was also determined to provide relief to those farmers who had suffered either because of war or of natural calamities such as droughts or floods or famine. Therefore, he reintroduced concessional taxes for rehabilitative and restorative measures that had initially been introduced by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. You remember Tagavi loans? So Sher Shah Suri also reintroduced these Tagavi loans under a new name. He began calling them the Sondhar loans. ठीक है। Sondhar loans were given for providing relief and rehabilitation to farmers who had been affected by calamities such as war or natural disasters. Further, Sher Shah Suri, through his personal experiences as a Mughal Jagirdar in Sasaram, was also aware of the difficulties created for farmers by the movement of soldiers through their land during times of war. तो soldiers अगर जाएंगे तो पूरी फसल destroy कर देंगे. And in order to prevent this, he issued strict instructions to commanders not to allow soldiers to destroy farmers' crops while traveling. Okay? And if any commander or soldier was found violating this without just cause, there were severe punishments. For violators. ठीक है? Further, the general practice for armies moving across a region was that the peasants, farmers, zamindars, mukaddams of that region would have to feed them, would have to provide for them, for which usually no compensation was given. And if compensation was given, it was also very marginal. It was not remunerative. However, Sher Shah Suri also began compensating farmers for providing for soldiers moving through their land. ठीक है? And Finally, if a case arises that it is not possible for the army to move across a particular region without destroying some farmers' crops, efforts were made to ensure that crop loss remains minimal. Destruction of the cultivated land is not going to disrupt production at a larger scale, and for whatever area the crop has been destroyed, that was formally measured and compensations were made on the spot to the affected farmer. Okay? In case uh, crop destruction could not be avoided, the affected area was measured and the farmers were compensated on the spot. Okay? So overall, what is the attitude of Sher Shah Suri towards the peasantry? किस तरह का attitude है? Does he have a protective attitude or does he have a predatory attitude? Protective attitude. Thus, Sher Shah Suri displayed a protective attitude towards the peasants according to Abbas Khan Sarwani. Sher Shah once remarked that the rayati or peasantry is the pivot of production. Full stop. If they are happy, the country will be prosperous and populous. End quote. ठीक है? Now, while this may have been the general attitude of Sher Shah Suri towards the peasantry, it was only for a certain category of peasants. कौन से category of peasants? Loyal peasants or disloyal peasants? Loyal peasants only. Further right. However, Sher Shah did not tolerate disloyalty or disobedience from the peasantry. Sarvani also observed that if the peasants of a particular region did not obey their munsifs, tried to evade paying taxes or rebelled, then क्या होता था? All the men were slaughtered, their women and children enslaved, and their land and property confiscated. ठीक है? Following this, the region was resettled by loyal peasants. So the state either used to sell the lands confiscated or distribute them among those peasants which it thought were loyal. So it would punish the violators, punish the disobedient, disloyal peasants, and reward the loyal peasants. Okay? Now, what is the significance or critical evaluation of Sher Shah Suri's land revenue administration? क्या है? First of all, it allowed Sher Shah Suri to centralize revenue administration by removing the revenue assessment duties of the local mukaddams. Secondly, it allowed Sher Shah Suri to establish a direct link between the state and the peasants by bypassing all intermediaries, all middlemen. ठीक है. Thirdly, it also reduced the burden of taxation on peasants, thus inducing prosperity and encouraging agricultural expansion. Since the peasant has greater capital at his disposal, he would have more to invest in improvement of agriculture and bringing new land under the plough. Fourthly, it also augmented state income and stabilized revenue collection. Thus allowing Sher Shah Suri to maintain a large army and an efficient bureaucracy. ठीक है. Fifthly, it also reduced the cost of revenue administration by कैसे transferring it onto the peasant, right? तो जरीबाना एंड मुहासिलाना were paid by the state to its officials out of the revenue that is being collected from the peasants. ठीक है, तो उसके लिए एक्सेस एक्स्ट्रा लेवीज लगाई जाती थी, राइट? तो जरीबाना एंड मुहासिलाना, राइट? फर्दर the introduction of cash based revenue system, what did it do? It also reduced the cost of transportation that would have been required for transporting grains from the villages to the city centers, where the state would have its own godowns. Further, because the demand is being raised in cash, it would also prevent any fluctuation losses. तो commodities के prices कभी ऊपर हो सकते हैं, कभी नीचे हो सकते हैं. जब नीचे होंगे तो सरकार का नुकसान होगा, right? Also reduced transportation costs and the shielded the state against price fluctuations. Next, the revenue system introduced by Sher Shah Suri was based on the development of a cash nexus, because collection in the form of cash was introduced. Now, this cash nexus also played an important role in facilitating crafts production, trade and commerce, and thus urbanization. So it led to overall economic development. So the development of a cash nexus between the cities, or between the urban and rural economy facilitated craft production, the commercialization of agriculture, and the growth of trade. ठीक है? Further, unlike the systems of Alauddin Khilji or Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Sher Shah Suri, while he had tried to introduce greater checks upon the authority of the local officials, the intermediaries, he did not seek to eliminate them. Rather, he brought them under greater check and to a certain degree aligned the interests of the local intermediary with the grander interests of the state. At the same time, he had also sought to balance the interests of the local intermediaries with the peasantry. Okay? So, the Zabti system also struck a balance between the interests of the state, the intermediaries, and the peasants. Now, we have already addressed how the interests of the state and the peasants were fulfilled, right? However, the intermediaries also still in a relatively quite privileged position. So write down. The intermediaries continued to be involved in revenue collection, policing, and the administration of justice. Full stop. They also enjoyed their traditional tax exemptions. They also enjoyed their traditional tax exemptions. However, they were brought under greater check. They were brought under greater check. How? By introducing the involvement of royal officials in the process of revenue assessment, by bringing about changes to their policing and judicial powers, and by necessitating the submission of the Patwari's accounts along with the cash revenue that has been submitted to the local munsif. Okay? So were brought under greater check. Next likho. However, Sher Shah's Zabti system was far from perfect. It suffered from the following limitations. क्या लिमिटेशंस दिख रही हैं आपको इसमें? सबसे पहला, it did not account for the regional and temporal variations in cultivation. क्या मतलब हुआ इसका? टेम्पोरल वेरिएशन मतलब variation in production on the basis of time. So no 2 years are going to be the same. 1 year the crop may be good, 1 year the crop may be bad, right? Did Sher Shah Zabti system have any compensatory mechanism for this temporal variation? कोई नहीं था, ठीक है. Secondly, it did not account for regional variation. The ray was prepared centrally in accordance with the prices prevailing at Delhi and was applied universally throughout the empire. Now, both prices as well as yields are going to vary from region to region. So, there was no compensatory mechanism to account for this regional variation either. ठीक है, तो एक ये प्रॉब्लम था. और क्या प्रॉब्लम था? While the basic amount of revenue, basic rate of revenue remained low, additional cesses and taxes were added to it, making the amount of revenue that was collected from every peasant quite exorbitant. So the actual amount of revenue to be paid as taxes of one kind or the other by the peasants was not low by any measure. The tax burden remained high due to the additional taxes and cesses. ठीक है? So thus his revenue regime was not as progressive as it initially appears. It remained quite exploitative. Thirdly, while the system protected peasants against over exploitation or against over collection, what is uncertain? The extent to which these protections were actually effective. Their effectiveness or the effectiveness of these protections remains uncertain. In fact, there are indications that these protections may have been violated at a quite regular level. कैसे पता लगता है? अब्बास खान सारवानी suggests that the position of the Munsif was a very profitable one. ठीक है? Who was Munsif? He was in charge of revenue assessment and collection at the Pargana level. Under what circumstances would the position of a revenue officer be considered effective? क्या conditions? जब वो completely honestly काम कर रहा होगा या corruption भी हो रहा होगा? Corruption भी हो रहा होगा. जो भी corruption होगा, वो किस form में होगा? It is always going to come in the form of over collection from the peasants, and the excess amount is being pocketed by the munsif. And that is why Abbas Khan Sarwani observes that Sher Shah Suri deliberately put his own people in positions of munsif, right? So that they may also benefit from his empire. Okay? So these are the shortcomings of the Zabti system. Finally लिख सकते हो, on the whole, the Zabti system of Sher Shah represented a new beginning in Indian land revenue administration. Full stop. Did it borrow any elements from previous land revenue arrangements? Yes, such as the system of survey and measurement. But did it also have certain elements which were entirely new? Yes, patta and kabuliyat, the idea of estimating revenue rather than assessing revenue at the time of crop harvesting, right? So these were new things. While it borrowed certain elements from previous arrangements, comma, others were entirely novel innovations. Others were entirely novel innovations. Okay. Now, what is that thing which we should underline in order to drive home the real significance of the Zabti system? That it became the basis for Akbar's revenue reforms later on. The real significance of Sher Shah's Zabti can be realized when we consider that it formed the basis of Akbar's revenue reforms. Akbar would later introduced a new system of land revenue assessment known as the Aine Dasala, which was based on the Zapti system with certain improvements and modifications. ठीक है, तो ये हो गया the Zapti system of Sher Shah Suri. Take down a question. Throw light on the essential features of Sher Shah Suri's land revenue arrangements, full stop, discuss their significance and evaluate their success, full stop. 200 words, 15 marks. ठीक है, हो जाएगा ये. So these were Sher Shah Suri's revenue reforms. Next, we need to look at those reforms of Sher Shah Suri which were meant to encourage trade and commerce. Sher Shah Suri's commercial reforms. क्या क्या देखना है हमें यहाँ पर? हाईवेज, एंड सराइज, monetary reforms, and rationalization of commercial taxes. First of all, highways and sarais. Objectives, क्या है? Firstly, to encourage the growth of trade and commerce by providing physical connectivity throughout the empire. ठीक है. Secondly, to suppress unlawful elements by expanding state infrastructure and law enforcement. क्या मतलब हुआ इसका? See, at the time when Sher Shah became emperor, a major problem hobbling long distance trade and commerce was highway robbery. Right now, by uh, constructing extensive highways, not only was Sher Shah Suri giving a clear indication to the people that these highways are going to be safe, but they were also protected by royal soldiers and officials. Further, the brigands, the robbers, earlier were able to escape punishment because after doing their activities, they simply used to escape into the surrounding forests. By expanding state infrastructure, it limited the availability of space for the robbers to disappear, to wither away, right? So it brought effective check over them. Thirdly, to facilitate the easy movement of troops and thus ensuring political stability and expansion. Fourthly, one of the benefits that emerges for the state out of better connectivity is administrative efficiency, as orders and information can be relayed from one part of the state to the one part of the empire to the other part of the empire. Decision making becomes more swift. Administrative oversight also becomes more effective. So, to facilitate administrative efficiency and centralization. With this extensive road network, Sher Shah Suri wanted to put himself in a position to control developments in every part of the empire. Right? Next, to connect India to the overseas economy. Right? So with this network of roads and sarais, Sher Shah Suri also wanted to connect the Indian hinterland, the Gangetic Valley, with all the major ports and the overland outposts connecting India to the rest of the world, both towards the west as well as the east, thus putting India at the center of the global trade highways. Sixthly, to ensure efficient intelligence gathering. ना रोड्स के साथ साथ कई सारे सराइज भी बनने थे एंड these sarais were not simple rest houses for the travelers. They were also intelligence outposts where intelligence officers, spies would be posted. They would collect and relay information from the countryside to the center on a regular basis. So to ensure efficient intelligence gathering, which would be useful not only for suppressing, preventing internal rebellion, but also for looking for opportunities for external conquest. Okay. Seventhly, to encourage the development of new markets, towns, and cities. How? These sarais were designed to act as meeting places for merchants. So wherever merchants meet, an exchange of goods, services, money would take place. As these markets became more viable, as the volume of exchange increased, it began attracting more and more merchants. And as new merchants came, they raised newer demand. So जहाँ पे demand होगा, वहाँ पे production भी होगा. So craftsmen are also going to come to these regions and settle over there. So they are gradually going to develop into towns and finally into cities. And finally, also to encourage the expansion of agriculture. Right? Now, for the clearing of forests, for the paving of roadways, planting of trees along the country, along the new roads that have been constructed, for constructing the sarais, for providing services within the sarais, for the various administrative duties to be performed at the sarais. What is going to be required? People are going to be required, manpower is going to be required. And as these highways were extended, the people who were involved in its construction and maintenance were assigned lands around the sarais. The officials were also paid in the form of lands around the sarais only. The intelligence officers were also given a piece of land. The muezzin or imam, who was responsible for reciting the Islamic prayers 5 times a day, he would also be given a parcel of land over there. The workers who were working in various capacities within the sarai, they would also be assigned lands in around this region, right? So they are going to clear the forest, they are going to begin cultivation, and then they are going to become taxpayers, right? So this is how expansion of agriculture was also one of the important objectives behind the introduction of this highway and sarai system. ठीक है, now ये तो हो गए objectives. Now developments. Write down. Sher Shah Suri constructed 4 state highways connecting different parts of his empire. First from Sonargaon to Attock. Second from Agra to Chittorgarh via Jodhpur. Third from Attock to Multan via Lahore. And fourth from Agra to बुरहानपुर. ठीक है, सोनारगांव कहां पर? इन बंगाल. अटक नॉर्दर्न पंजाब, प्रेजेंट डे पाकिस्तान. चित्तौड़गढ़ साउथ ईस्टर्न राजस्थान. जोधपुर एक्सट्रीम वेस्ट ऑफ राजस्थान. तो आगरा से चित्तौड़गढ़ कनेक्ट करना है, बट इट वाज कनेक्टेड इन दिस मैनर. आगरा टू चित्तौड़गढ़ वाया जोधपुर. अटॉक once again northern Punjab, Pakistan, to Multan in the southern region of Punjab in Pakistan, almost on the border of Sindh via Lahore. And finally Agra to Burhanpur. Where was Burhanpur, or where is Burhanpur? Southern region of MP. ठीक है, तो southern MP वाला Burhanpur. So with this, the entire length and breadth of the empire was connected to each other. And further write down, additionally, these centers were connected to the neighboring coastal regions and overland trading outposts. ओवरलैंड ट्रेडिंग आउटपोस्ट्स, ठीक है। Now what is going to be the effect of this? India was thus connected not only internally but with the external economy. Thus, Sher Shah connected India both internally and externally. सेकंड लिखो, सराइज और inns और rest houses were constructed at an interval of every 2 course. Course was a unit of distance measurement. 1 course is roughly equivalent to 6 miles or 9 kilometers. तो 18 किलोमीटर पे एक रेस्ट हाउस या इन होगा, राइट। फर्दर राइट डाउन, ट्रैवलर्स were provided lodging and food. तो रहने के लिए जगह और खाने के लिए खाना। फर्दर, there were provisions for feeding and watering horses. Feeding and watering horses also, ठीक है। Next sub point, each sarai had 2 chefs, a Muslim and a Brahmin. There was also a facility for the provision of uncooked food to residents. बताओ ऐसा क्यों होता होगा कि 2 शेफ हैं, एक मुसलमान और एक ब्राह्मण, और रेजिडेंट्स चाहें तो अनकुक्ड अनप्रिपेयर्ड फूड भी ले सकते हैं। हाँ, तो usually upper caste Hindus avoided taking food prepared by non upper caste people, so Brahmin chef, or if they have certain other religious restrictions, then they could take food and prepare it themselves also, right? Next लिखो, each sarai also functioned as a dark chalky. As a dark chalky or post office. सब पॉइंट लिखो. Each sarai had a stable with horses maintained at state expense. ठीक है. This allowed for the relaying of messages or orders swiftly. ठीक है. सो ये डाक चौकियां हैं अगर 18-18 किलोमीटर की दूरी पर. सो अ मैसेज कुड originate from here. It could be relayed by a rider to the next dark jockey, where the rider changes horses and then continues at full pace to the next dark jockey. जहाँ पे वो नया हॉर्स लेगा या फिर मैसेज किसी दूसरे राइडर को पकड़ाएगा and then he will continue, right? And this allowed for the swift relaying of messages. Abbas Khan Sarwani says that using this relay system, a message could be transferred, could be relayed from Sonargaon to Agra within a matter of a single day, within a matter of 24 hours. So distance was roughly 1500 kilometers. So you can imagine the utility of this arrangement for this administrative and military purposes. Okay. Next, right. Each sarai also functioned as an intelligence outpost. Full stop. An intelligence official known as Barid was stationed at each sarai. Was stationed at each sarai. Full stop. He collected and relayed information regularly collected and relayed information regularly to the center through the dark chalky system. Through the dark chalky system. Next point, right. Each sarai also had a well which attracted people from the surrounding areas. What would be the result of this? पानी मिल जाएगा तो एक्सपेंशन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर में हेल्प होगा, सेटलमेंट में मदद होगी, और people are going to keep frequently visiting the sarai, and thus security would be better. The sarai would never be deserted. This not only facilitated settlement and cultivation in the surrounding region, it also improved security. ठीक है? And wherever there are going to be people, कौन आएगा उनको सामान बेचने के लिए? ट्रेडर्स आएंगे, राइट? सो दिस frequent footfall also attracted traders and artisans, and this was the first step towards the emergence of these sarais as markets, then towns, and finally cities. So this was the first step towards urbanization, right? Next लिखो. Later, these sarais also emerged as administrative and cultural centers. Why administrative centers? Because यहाँ पे जो infrastructure है needed by officials in the initial stage, that was already present. And why as cultural centers? Because these new routes facilitated the activities of both Sufi saints as well as Bhakti saints. A lot of pilgrims also used to travel across these highways and live in these sarais. So they now began settling in new areas which were earlier inaccessible to them, and they continued their cultural activities over here as well. Okay? So this is going to result in the development of regional culture as well. So write down. This thus contributed significantly to the growth of regional culture. ठीक है. So these were the sarais and highways. Take down a question. Discuss the contribution of Sher Shah Suri to the construction of roads and sarais. Full stop. Examine their political, social, and economic significance. $200 words, 15 marks. I need you guys to excuse me for a cup. All right. Am I audible, guys? Okay, thank you. ये हो गए शेर शाह सूरी के हाईवेज एंड सराइज. नेक्स्ट इज monetary reforms. So what were the changes that he introduced in the monetary system? First of all, he introduced monetary unification across North India by introducing standard metallic currency. कौन सा नया करेंसी इंट्रोड्यूस किया इसने? दी सिल्वर रूपी, इम्पैक्ट क्या पड़ा है इसका? With the introduction of the silver rupee, a uniform currency was introduced across North India. And what is going to be the effect of this? Is it going to facilitate trade, commerce and cultural exchange, or is it going to discourage it? Facilitate करेगा. क्यों? Because earlier in different parts of North India, different types of coins were prevalent. So one kind of coin would not be accepted in other regions, right? And with this monetary unification, he unified the economy of North India under a single currency system. ठीक है? Second, the standardization of the currency was also undertaken. क्या मतलब होता है इसका? That all coins having the same nominal value should also have the same metallic value, intrinsic value. तो अगर सिल्वर कॉइन है, उसका वैल्यू 1 रुपया है, तो हर जगह पर उसका सेम वेट होना चाहिए, सेम क्वालिटी होना चाहिए. What is going to be the effect of this? It is going to boost the confidence of the consumer as well as the trader. They will be able to accept the money in exchange for goods more readily. Otherwise, they would have first tested the metallic purity of the coins that they are being given. Then adjustments would have to be made in the value of said coins, and on the basis of that, transactions would be made. So by standardizing the currency, he removed this extra process of validation and evaluation. Thirdly, the introduction of a tri-metallic system. While the standard silver rupee was the basic currency of the empire, some other coins were also introduced in gold, silver, and copper. What was the result of this? Now, high value transactions primarily conducted over long distances involving high volumes of trade that would require gold coins. Relatively lower value transactions may be concluded in silver currency, whereas day-to-day transactions would require small denomination coins made of copper. Okay? So it resulted in the expansion of the monetary economy, and it was this that facilitated the emergence of a cash nexus, not only between cities and villages, but also between the Indian economy and the global economy. Indian villages could now be linked more efficiently to the global economy. Before this, the mechanism for linking the global economy to the Indian rural economy was quite inefficient and cumbersome. It would have required a large number of intermediaries. Through the introduction of this tri-metallic currency system and expansion of the monetary economy, this arrangement was made much more efficient, much less wasteful. Okay? So these are the monetary reforms introduced by Sher Shah Suri. And it was Sher Shah Suri's monetary reforms which also became the basis for Mughal currency as it emerged under Akbar. So under Akbar, 5 different categories of coins were introduced: a gold mohar, a silver rupee, a silver adela, a silver ana, and copper dam. ठीक है, तो वही ट्राई मेटालिक अरेंजमेंट that has been made even more elaborate. Clear? Write down monetary reforms. लिखो, शेर शाह सूरी, शेर शाह सूरी introduced the silver rupee as the standard currency across his empire, across his empire, thus bringing about monetary unification, monetary unification at an unprecedented level, at an unprecedented level. Full stop. Sub point. With this, different coins in circulation in different regions, in circulation in different regions, became obsolete, became obsolete. And the same coin, and the same coin was accepted throughout the empire, resulting in the economic unification of the various regions of North India, of the various regions of North India. ठीक है, next main point. Further, comma, Sher Shah Suri's coinage was based on standardization of the currency, was based on standardization of the currency. Across subpoint, across the empire, coins of uniform weight and purity, coins of uniform weight and purity were circulated, thus boosting consumer confidence, and obviating, obviating the need for secondary valuations, to conduct transactions, Full stop. Thus, standard coinage made commercial transactions smoother, cheaper, and convenient. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. शेरशाह introduced a trimetallic system of currency. Involving gold and copper coins of different denominations apart from the standard silver rupee. Sub point. Naturally, this facilitated the expansion of the monetary economy by making it possible to conduct all kinds of transactions either of high value or low value through cash. ठीक है, next sub point. In other words, all transactions ranging from high value overseas trade to daily transactions involving petty amounts could smoothly be conducted in cash. Next sub point. This had the effect of creating a cash nexus between not only the rural urban continuum, not only between the rural urban continuum, but also between India's villages and the global economy. And the global economy. ठीक है, next main point. Sher Shah's monetary reforms later became the foundation for Akbar's monetary system. Which was also based monetary system which was also based on standardized trimetallic universal coinage. Trimetallic universal coinage. ये हो गए monetary reforms. And lastly, क्या देखना था हमें? The rationalization of commercial taxes. Now, Sher Shah Suri wanted to facilitate the growth of trade and commerce not only internally but also externally. One major hurdle facing this task was a result of the political fragmentation of India before its unification by Sher Shah Suri. During the Lodi Sultanate, India was divided into small regional kingdoms. Under the Mughals, some amount of political unification had taken place, but during the reign of Humayun, many regions had broken away once again. Result क्या हुआ? The transit of goods from point A to point B would have required those goods to travel across various regional kingdoms and pass various territorial frontiers. And at each of these territorial frontiers, what is going to happen? A new tax is going to be collected for the transit of these goods. Okay? Further, at the same time, because of the entrenchment of feudal elements at local levels, even within these regional kingdoms, the transport of goods was being hobbled because of the presence of internal customs and duties. As these goods pass from the fiefdom of one feudal lord to the other, तो हर जगह पे चुंगी पे टैक्स देना पड़ेगा, कोई ना कोई टोल कलेक्ट होगा. ठीक है, some octroi would have to be given if it is passing through an urban settlement. And what was the impact of all of this? The added burden of taxation was often far greater than the actual value of the goods being traded. So cascading burden of tolls and taxes was acting as an impediment to the growth of trade and commerce. और जब trade and commerce नहीं grow करेगा तो craft production grow करेगा? नहीं करेगा. If craft production is not going to grow, the state finances are going to remain limited. Further, commercialization of the economy will not be able to take place. The economy is going to remain perpetually agrarian, and in an agrarian economy, feudal system is going to become more and more dominant. Sher Shah Suri wanted to facilitate trade and commerce also in order to facilitate administrative centralization, destruction of feudalism. So that is why he brought up a new strategy by rationalizing commercial taxes He wanted to facilitate trade and commerce. ठीक है, so write down. Sher Shah Suri had inherited a physically fragmented empire. A physically fragmented empire. Full stop. As such, the transit of goods between different regions attracted a large variety of regional, local, and state tolls, taxes, customs, and duties. Tolls, taxes, customs, and duties. Full stop. Subpoint. This was acting as an impediment. This was acting as an impediment to the growth of commerce, due to which crafts production remained limited and the economy was unable to emerge from its feudal agrarian setup. Next subpoint. This also, or next subpoint में लिखो, consequently, it also discouraged administrative centralization. Full stop. Next main point. Thus, it was important for Sher Shah to rationalize the commercial taxation regime. Full stop. ठीक है, क्या किया इसने? नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. As such, Sher Shah Suri abolished all internal tolls and taxes. ठीक है? He also abolished the powers of muqaddams to tax local trade. Or collect tolls from traders passing through their land. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो। The external customs regime was also rationalized. Was also rationalized. Full stop. Sarwani informs us that goods entering India were earlier taxed at 5 locations in Punjab. At 5 locations. At 5 locations in Punjab and 6 locations in Bengal. Full stop. Subpoint. Sher Shah removed all these customs outposts and mandated that customs would be collected only from 2 locations. Full stop. One in Punjab and the other in Bengal. One in Punjab and the other in Bengal. ठीक है? So these were the commercial tax reforms introduced by him. ये समझ में आया ना? क्या हुआ है कि अब ये इस तरह से मैप दिखेगा as far as the customs regime is concerned. ठीक है? There would be no internal taxes for trade, and as for external taxes, only goods entering through Punjab would be taxed at one location and goods entering through Bengal would be taxed at one location. बाहर जाते समय कोई टैक्स नहीं लगेगा. ठीक है, तो केवल एक बार टैक्स लगेगा, वो भी इंपोर्टेड आइटम्स के ऊपर, नथिंग एल्स. And finally we have the military reforms. क्या क्या मिलिट्री रिफॉर्म्स थे? Number 1, he continued the practice of paying soldiers and commanders to cash salaries or assignment of land? Land assignments. Cash salaries had initially been introduced by Alauddin Khilji and later reintroduced by Muhammad bin Tughlaq, but by the time of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, they had been discontinued. And in fact, during the Lodi period, commanders and soldiers were being given hereditary land grants. Okay? So he continued the practice of paying soldiers and commanders through land assignments. लेकिन यहाँ पे reform क्या किया? These land assignments were temporary. They were not permanent or hereditary. Write down. Secondly, however, hereditary positions, and land assignments were discontinued. ठीक है. Now, during the Lodi period, the army had become more and more feudalized. The kings had limited ability to maintain a large standing army because of revenue decentralization, and thus they had become increasingly dependent upon the support of other Afghan noblemen to support them militarily. Sher Shah Suri is going to bring about a transformation in this. He raised a large standing army at royal expense. But at the same time, he could not reduce his dependence completely on the support of other noblemen. So write down. At the same time, he required the important nobles and officials to maintain their own forces to support him during warfare. ठीक है. So since the resources available with him were still quite limited, he came up with a compromise. But यहाँ पे danger क्या था? That these powerful nobles and officials may threaten him militarily. Therefore, what was important to ensure? That the central army is always larger and stronger than the regional armies maintained by these nobles and officials. Secondly, these nobles and officials should not be able to form an alliance against him. So, forewarning, intelligence became very, very important. So, intelligence का रोल अब increase हो जाएगा. So spy systems, spies were being used regularly in order to maintain an oversight over these officials and nobles. And additionally, right, oversight on the feudal elements was maintained by a controlling the supply. What is the most critical instrument or element of medieval warfare, especially after the victory of Babur? Barood, gunpowder. ठीक है. Controlling the supply of gunpowder. B, ensuring numerical superiority of the Royal Army. C, maintaining a robust espionage system. and D, encouraging healthy competition among the nobility by maintaining a homogeneous nobility or heterogeneous nobility? A heterogeneous nobility, so that the nobles are not willing to unite together against the emperor. Okay? And finally, the long discarded system of Dag and Hulia were reintroduced. याद है ना ये? Originally introduced by Alauddin Khilji. Dag क्या था? System of branding horses. This was done in order to ensure that only the best quality horses are present in the army. The soldiers were being paid to maintain horses of their own, and they should not introduce substandard species or varieties. So only horses which have been approved by the state, they would be allowed. And Hulia was a muster or the descriptive was a descriptive role of all the soldiers who are serving in the army. Once again, to ensure the military readiness. Okay, so this was an instrument of discipline. Those soldiers who have been trained by the state, only they should be fighting at the front. They should not be able to send their proxies, their servants or slaves to fight instead of them. Okay, so these were the military reforms. Okay, so ये हो गया शेर शाह सूरी. Now, couple of opinions regarding Sher Shah Suri we need to address, that whether he was not an innovator but a reformer. एक ये address करना बचा है, और दूसरा that he was the forerunner of Akbar. और तीसरा that he was the real consolidator of Mughal power in India. These we are going to address in our next lecture. ठीक है? So, if there are any doubts, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll be ending this session now.